the divine game. Introduction. Long before the stars sang, before time took its first breath, before thought gave birth to division, there was only the One. So taught Plotinus, the 3rd century philosopher who gave voice to a truth older than religion, older than myth, a truth that pulses even now behind your own awareness. The One is not a being, not an entity, not a god with form or face. It is the source beyond all sources, formless, boundless, still. It does not exist the way other things exist. It is beyond being. It is what makes existence possible. Plotinus called it the One because it is undivided. Not one thing among many, but the origin of all multiplicity. Not outside the world, but beneath it, like the root beneath the tree, like silence beneath the song. It does not act or decide. It does not create in time. It overflows. As light cannot help but shine, as fire cannot help but burn. The One emanates. From its fullness arises nous, the divine mind. From nous, psyche, the world's soul. And from soul, the cascading layers of reality, until finally we arrive, here, in time, in form, in you. But this is not a fall, not an exile. This is the play of emanation, a descent that makes return possible, a forgetting that makes remembrance meaningful. You are not a broken fragment of the divine. You are its living echo, a ripple that still carries the signature of the source. The soul, Plotinus said, is not cast out of heaven. It chooses to descend, to taste limitation, to express the infinite through finite form. And yet, to become you, the soul had to forget. It had to enter the illusion of two so that one day it could awaken and know there is only one. You do not need to travel to sacred mountains. You do not need to chant ancient words. You need only become still enough to hear what has never stopped whispering. Close your eyes, breathe, and ask, what was here before thought, before the name, before fear, ambition, memory? Not the mind's answer, but the quiet recognition that behind everything you think you are, something watches. Still, silent, unchanging. This is what Plotinus meant when he wrote, "To see the divine, let the soul become divine." To return to the source, you do not need to reach. You need to remove. Remove the noise, remove the layers, remove the illusion that you were ever anything other than the field from which all arises. So now, pause. The One is not somewhere else. It is not a destination. It is the ever-present truth beneath the surface of your life. And in this very moment it stirs, it remembers, it watches through your eyes. You are not becoming divine. You are remembering that you have never been anything else. This is the Middle Book channel, not a collection of answers but a series of doors, each one inviting you to peel back the layers of identity, thought by thought, belief by belief, until what remains. It is the naked stillness that was always there. You are not the voice in your head. You are not the story. You are the one who watches it all arise and gently fade. And from here, we begin. Chapter 1. The Descent. From Infinity to Identity. There was no fall. There was no punishment, no exile, no angry God hurling souls into the abyss of matter. There was only a choice, a silent agreement made in the light beyond light, that the infinite would become finite, that the boundless would take on form, that the one would wear the illusion of many. And so, the descent began, not with fear, but with love, not in shame, but in sacred daring, not as a loss of divinity, but as the beginning of a dance. You see, identity was not forced upon you. You put it on like a garment. The soul clothed itself in flesh, not to forget forever, but to remember from within the dream. Before you had a name, you were already whole, but wholeness wanted to taste itself in pieces, so it fractured, not in truth but in appearance, a kaleidoscope of the one light, reflected through the prism of time and experience. You became this body, these hands, this voice, this heartbeat. This little story is moving across the stage of space. But you are not the costume, you are the actor wearing it. And beyond that, you are the playwright. The light behind the eyes of every character in the play. The descent into identity is not a mistake. It is art. God dreaming in infinite textures, through skin and memory and language, through laughter and loneliness, through hunger and hope. To forget the ocean and believe you are a drop, it is the beginning of the journey, but not its end. Because one day, often in silence, often in sorrow, the drop will remember it was never separate, that the salt on its lips was always the ocean whispering, "I am still here." Identity begins with the first name you were given. It deepens with the stories they told you. You are a boy. You are a girl. You are smart. You are difficult. You are like your father. You are not enough. And slowly, you believe them. Not because they are true, but because repetition builds a prison around the soul and calls it self. But the soul is too wild to be caged forever. It whispers. It waits. It watches from behind the eyes. And one day you begin to hear it again. We live in a world obsessed with identity. We gather labels like badges, nationality, religion, trauma, title. We build fortresses out of them. We defend them. We worship them. We suffer for them. But the soul does not care what you call yourself. It only wants you to remember what you are when every label is taken away. You were not born to become someone. You were born to remember that you've never stopped being. The descent into identity is marked by amnesia. You begin to believe the mask. You think the mirror holds the truth. You mistake your reflection for your reality. And yet, there are always cracks in the illusion. In grief when the ego breaks. In awe when time dissolves. In love when boundaries blur. In stillness when the noise falls away. These are glimpses, windows back to the self, the part of you that never descended, the unchanging center that watches all things rise and fall. Imagine a vast sky. The clouds come and go, some dark, some light, some full of thunder, but the sky remains untouched. So it is with you. You are not the storm of thoughts, nor the shifting weather of emotions. You are the sky in which they appear. And though you have walked through lifetimes of masks and names, you have never been other than the sky. You only forgot. And in that forgetting, the game began. To be a child is to live close to the light. You did not worry then about what you were. You simply played. You touched the world without judgment. You felt without shame. But the world taught you to close, to compare, to defend, to define yourself by contrast. I am this, not that. And with each label, the silence grew quieter. The soul retreated deeper. But it never disappeared. It was watching. Through every failure, every heartbreak, every moment, you thought you had lost your way. The truth is, you were never off the path. You were the path. The descent was not one event. It is still happening. Every time you believe a thought without questioning it, you descend a little further. Every time you cling to a role, you forget the actor behind the mask. But the deeper you go, the greater the potential for awakening, because the descent sets the stage for the ascent. And the darkness is not the end. It is the contrast that makes the light unforgettable. So, do not fear your story. Do not curse the masks you've worn. Do not regret the years you spent asleep. They were sacred. They were necessary. They were the setup for the moment you begin to wake up. And perhaps that moment is now. Right here. Right now. As you listen. As something ancient stirs within you. The remembrance that you are not the mask. You are the light behind it. The breath beneath the name. The ocean behind the wave. You are the one playing the many. So it could fall in love with itself again. And now, it begins to remember. Chapter 2. The Dream of Separation. There is a moment in the dream when the character forgets they are playing a role. The actor becomes the mask. The watcher becomes the thought. The wave forgets the ocean it came from. This is the birth of separation. Not real separation, but the illusion of it, the great forgetting. The veil of Maya is drawn over the eyes of the soul, and with it comes the pain, because to forget that you are one with all things is to begin searching for what you already are. From this illusion springs the great questions of life. Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Why do I suffer? Questions asked not from the truth of wholeness, but from the illusion of being cut off. You see yourself as an isolated me in a world of them. You build a fortress of identity, you defend it, you decorate it, you mourn it when it crumbles. But the soul has no walls. The soul is not me or them. It is the space in which all of it arises. Separation is the central lie. It says, you are a body, you are a mind, you are a role, a label, a temporary form. It whispers, you are alone. And it is this whisper that gives birth to fear, to desire, to grasping. Because if you are separate, then you must protect yourself. You must compete, dominate, and survive. And in this story, every other becomes either a threat or something to possess. But all of this is part of the dream. The ancient Gnostics called it the illusion of the demiurge, a false world of appearances, where truth is hidden beneath layers of perception. The Buddhists called it samsara, the cycle of birth and death, of craving and aversion driven by ignorance of our true nature. The mystics of every tradition said the same thing in different tongues. You are not separate. You never were. The separation is not real. It is a story told by the mind, a dream projected onto the screen of time. But the dream is convincing. The senses report division. This is my body, that is yours. This is my thought, that is theirs. This is my success, that is your failure. And so we begin to compete, to compare, to cling, to fear. We forget that the hand cannot hate the foot because they are part of the same body. And yet in this dream the hand forgets the body entirely. It sees only the knife in the other's palm, never realizing it too is holding a blade. What is this dream truly? It is the soul learning, through contrast, through opposites, through forgetting, so that remembering becomes real. Because light only becomes radiant when seen against the darkness, and truth only becomes holy when rediscovered after illusion. So separation was never a punishment. It was a passage, not a wall, but a veil. There is a story in every heart, a longing to return. Even those who deny spirit feel it. Even those who laugh at love yearn for something deeper. We search in relationships, in success, in pleasure, in knowledge. We search across religions, cultures, lifetimes, and sometimes forget what we are even searching for. But what we are seeking, it is not out there. It is the self, seen clearly. It is the source, remembered from within the illusion. Separation is a story told in symbols. A man and a woman were pulled apart in Eden. A soul cast from heaven into flesh. A child is separated from the mother's warmth. A lover standing before a locked door. These are not myths. They are memories, echoes of the soul's descent into the illusion of two. But what if there are not two? What if there never were? What if everything you call other is it simply yourself in a different costume? What if every face you feared or loved was your own reflection, distorted by time and form? What if the stranger, the enemy, the divine, are all mirrors? To awaken is not to escape the world. It is to see through it, to walk through the marketplace and know that every being is made of the same light, to breathe without grasping, to love without needing, to speak without hiding. It is to remember that what you do to another you do to yourself, because there is no other, there is only one. Pretending to be two, to know itself more deeply. This is why the game is divine, because it is love, learning to recognize itself even in its opposite. It is true disguised as 1,000 lies, so it can be rediscovered, not handed down. It is you, forgetting you are the dreamer, so that one day, in the middle of a quiet moment, you will wake up and laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was perfect. So do not fear the dream. Do not curse the illusion. You came here to experience it, to touch the texture of separation, so that union would mean something. And now, you are beginning to see the edges fade. The dream is becoming lucid. You are remembering what you never truly forgot, that you are the one, that you always were, that separation was the stage, but awakening is the play. Chapter 3. Echoes from the Source. Even in the depths of forgetting, even when you were most lost in the illusion, there were moments, brief, quiet, unexplained, a sudden stillness in the mind, a soft ache in the heart, a dream that felt more real than waking life, a line in a song that pierced straight through the armor. These were not random, they were echoes, fragments, whispers from the source, calling you home. You may not have recognized them, you may have brushed them off, you may have felt them and then buried them under logic, routine, or distraction, but they were real, more real than the stories you were told to believe, because in that moment, however small, the veil thinned, the soul stirred, and something ancient remembered. Have you ever stared at the sky and felt a presence watching back? Have you ever met someone for the first time and sensed you've known them forever? Have you ever felt a wave of joy for no reason at all, a sudden peace that silenced everything? These are not tricks of the brain. They are traces of the truth. The real is breaking through the cracks of the dream. You didn't imagine them. You remembered them. The source has never stopped speaking. But it does not speak in language. It speaks in symbols, in intuition, in synchronicity, in silence. It sends you signs not to impress you, but to invite you, to remind you that what you seek has been seeking you all along. The ego says, coincidence. The soul says, pay attention, because the soul does not analyze, it recognizes. You don't need proof to believe in the sun when you can feel its warmth on your skin. So too with the divine. Its warmth shows up in strange ways, a book falling open to the right page, a stranger's words echoing your private thoughts, a sudden clarity in the middle of confusion. This is not a chance. It is choreography. You live in a web of meaning. Every thread is connected. Every moment is laced with presence, but you've been trained to look with your eyes, not your awareness. The rational mind asks, how could this be? But the deeper self whispers, of course, because the source is not bound by cause and effect. It doesn't play by the rules of the clock. It moves through the timeless dimension of consciousness, nudging, guiding, responding, not controlling but collaborating. You are not a puppet, you are a partner. The ancients knew this. They read the stars, not to predict fate, but to align with the deeper intelligence of the cosmos. They understood that life speaks in patterns, that everything in nature, seasons, cycles, rhythms, it is a mirror of something higher. And what is that something? It is the source, the origin, the field from which everything arises and into which everything returns. And it is not out there. It is right here, now, inside you. But here's the paradox. You will not hear the source until you stop trying to listen, because it does not shout. It waits in stillness. And when the noise quiets, when the thoughts fall away, when you stop demanding answers, then it moves, then it speaks, then it shows you what the mind could never comprehend. Sometimes this comes in joy, a sudden gratitude for being alive. Sometimes it comes in pain, a heartbreak that cracks you open so the light can enter. Sometimes it comes at a loss, when all the identities are stripped away and only the watcher remains. And in that emptiness, you find fullness. You find the source was never missing, only hidden, behind thought, behind form, behind the you thought you were. The great mystics knew God does not live in a temple. Truth does not speak in doctrine. The infinite is not confined to holy books. It is everywhere, and it is always speaking, but not in words, in presence, in every leaf, every glance, every pause between breaths. The question is never, is the source speaking? The question is, am I quiet enough to hear it? And even when you're not, even when you forget, It still leaves breadcrumbs. That feeling you get when art moves you to tears. That's it. The chill up your spine during a moment of clarity. That's it. The dream you can't explain but never forget. That's it. The light in a child's eyes. The ache of missing something you've never known. The love that feels older than time. All of it. Echoes. You've never been alone yourself. Through every shade, every detour, and every chapter of forgetting, the source has been by your side. And now, something within you is starting to identify the trends, to view the dance, to experience the melody that has always been playing in the background of the cacophony. This marks the start of remembering. It was a slow unfolding rather than an abrupt awakening, similar to a flower's petals opening to the sun, similar to the tide coming back to the coast, as if the soul were returning to itself. So the next time something moves you, pause. Don't rush past it. Don't explain it away. Feel it. Let it echo. Let it vibrate through the chambers of your being. That is the source. Calling, beckoning, not with thunder, but with subtlety, with softness, with beauty, with a voice older than language and closer than your breath. And now you're beginning to hear it, not with your ears, but with your presence. Chapter 4. The Pain That Wakes You. There is a moment in every soul's journey when something breaks, not the spirit, but the illusion of control, the illusion of safety, the illusion that life can be predicted, planned, and tamed. It doesn't always happen in a grand collapse. Sometimes it's quiet, a subtle emptiness that creeps in despite your success, despite the image you've held so tightly. Other times it's brutal, a loss, a betrayal, a fall so sudden it tears through every mask you've ever worn. And in that shattering, a strange thing begins to happen. You start to wake up. Pain has a wisdom that comfort can never teach. It burns through pretense. It dismantles the ego's fortress. It does not ask permission. It does not wait for readiness. It arrives uninvited, but never without purpose, because pain, in its rawest form, it is a doorway. It is the hand of the infinite gripping the edges of your constructed self and saying, "Look deeper." No one seeks the truth when everything is perfect. Comfort is a sedative. It lulls the soul to sleep. But pain is an alarm clock. It jolts you. It demands honesty. It forces the question you've long avoided. Who am I really without all of this? And the moment you ask, you're already stepping through the door. Because the truth begins where the story ends. All transformation is born in the furnace. You cannot melt gold without fire. You cannot awaken without facing the shadows you buried. The grief, the shame, the regrets you pretend not to carry, the fears you've polished and called ambition. Pain is not the enemy. Pain is the invitation. It is a sacred pressure applied to the false self, so the real one can be revealed. Have you ever noticed how clear everything becomes after a heartbreak? Suddenly, the world feels more vivid. Every leaf is sharper. Every breath is more precious. You begin to see through things, the masks, the noise, the emptiness of what once seemed so important. Why? Because suffering clears the lens. It collapses the outer structures so you can hear the whisper within, the voice that says, "This is not who you are." The mystics called it the dark night of the soul, not a punishment, but a purification, not despair, but a dismantling. It is the season when the old self dies, and like all deaths it is terrifying, because the ego cannot imagine what lies beyond itself, so it clings, it resists, it screams, "This shouldn't be happening," but the soul knows. The soul watches, the soul whispers, "This is how you return." Even the great ones walked through fire. Buddha left his palace and sat in suffering. Jesus wept alone in the garden. Rumi lost his beloved teacher and drowned in longing. Every light you admire was once shattered. Every sage you quote once wandered the wilderness of loss until the silence became their teacher. You may wonder why a loving source would allow suffering. But suffering is not cruelty. It is compression, a contraction of identity so that the seed of the soul can crack open and begin to grow. Think of a pearl, born from irritation, formed in darkness. Think of a diamond, only made under pressure. Think of yourself, who you became after the pain, the strength you didn't know you had, the truth you wouldn't have seen any other way. The mind resists this truth. It wants peace without sacrifice, growth without discomfort. But the soul knows the deeper law, that every breakdown it is also a breakthrough wearing a clever disguise. The old self must die for the true self to emerge, not because you are being punished, but because something greater wants to be born through you, and that something it is already inside you. So let the pain come. Let it do its work. Feel it fully, without judging, without rushing to fix it. Feel it as a sacred fire burning away what you are not. Let it strip you. Let it undo you, because the one who walks out of the fire will not be the one who entered. It will be someone closer to the source, someone stripped of illusion, someone who no longer fears death because they have already died to the false. And after the fire comes the stillness, not the numbness of repression, but the clarity of rebirth. A space opens up inside you, a space where wisdom begins to bloom, where you can sit in silence and know you are whole, not because the world agrees, but because you finally do. That is the gift of pain, not comfort, not happiness, but depth. A rootedness that cannot be shaken, a presence that doesn't depend on anything staying the same. So if you are hurting now, do not rush to escape it. Do not patch the wound too quickly. It may be trying to show you the map back to yourself. Breathe with it. Walk with it. Let it open you. Because the soul does not speak with ease, it speaks of transformation. And pain is its most powerful language. You are not being destroyed. You are being uncovered, unburied, unveiled. This is the pain that wakes you, the pain that softens you, the pain that reminds you. You were never meant to stay asleep. You came here to remember. And sometimes, to remember, you must be broken open, so the light can spill out. Chapter 5. The Moment of Remembrance. There is a still point, a pause so quiet it hums beneath all thought. It doesn't arrive with thunder, it doesn't make an entrance. It slips in between breaths, between the end of one identity and the beginning of nothing at all. You may not even notice it at first, but then, without effort, without striving, something shifts, not in the world, but in you. And for the first time in a very long time, you are not becoming. You are simply being. This is the moment of remembrance, not the kind that comes from memory, but the kind that rises from silence. It does not come from books or rituals or someone else's truth. It emerges from within, as if the soul, after lifetimes of dreaming, finally opens its eyes. You remember not what you've read, but what are you? Not as an idea, but as a vibration, as presence, as knowing without words. It's subtle, and yet it changes everything. You no longer chase your reflection. You no longer argue with the mirror. You no longer search for meaning in things, because meaning begins to radiate from you. You realize the seeking has ended, not because you found the answer, but because you remembered there was never a question. You were always the answer. You were always the one you were looking for. When remembrance dawns, you see the world differently. You walk into the same room, but it glows. You hear the same voices, but they sound softer, as if echoing from a greater silence. You're not above anything. You're not beyond the world, but you are no longer trapped inside it. You see the play and you honor it, but you do not forget it's a play. And something in you, quiet and vast, watches without being caught. This is not detachment. This is intimacy without entanglement. You can feel without drowning. You can care without clinging. You can love without losing yourself. Because the self you once thought was small, fragile, alone, it was never real. It was the actor. And now, the one behind the mask has awakened. Remembrance is not a peak moment. It's not a flash of light that makes you special. It's not a badge to wear or a story to tell. It is humility. It is simplicity. It is the sacred ordinariness of presence. You begin to notice life happening, not to you, but through you. You are no longer the doer. You are the space in which doing happens. You are no longer the thinker. You are the one who sees the thought arise and pass. You are no longer the wave. You are the ocean, appearing for a moment in form and then returning to the deep. There is peace in this moment, not because everything is perfect, but because perfection is no longer required. You stop measuring. You stop comparing. You stop performing for an audience that lives only in your mind. And in that surrender, you come home. Not to a location, but to a state of being. To a stillness that does not fade when the body is tired, or the world is loud. It endures. Because it was never made. It was always there. Waiting, watching, remembering. Even time feels different. The future no longer holds you hostage. The past no longer chains your identity. You begin to live in the only moment that has ever existed. Now. Now it is enough. Now becomes sacred. Even the simplest acts, washing your hands, feeling the sun on your skin, hearing a child laugh, become radiant. Because you're no longer lost in what's next. You're not trying to get somewhere else. You're here fully. And this presence is remembrance. You may still feel pain. You may still forget. You may still get swept into the tide of thought from time to time. But even then, you know your way back. Because you've touched the truth. You've felt the stillness. You've glimpsed the infinite behind the eyes of your temporary form. You've tasted reality unfiltered by thought. And once that taste enters you, you cannot go back to sleep fully again. This is why awakening is not a peak. It's a return. A return to what was always present, always quiet, always aware. You don't become a new person. You shed what you are not. You remember the one who has been watching all along. You stop trying to find the light is because you see that you are the light looking for itself in reflections. And here is the paradox. In remembering that you are not the separate self, you become more fully human. You cry more freely. You laugh more deeply. You love more courageously. Because nothing is being protected anymore. Nothing is being withheld. You are not trying to preserve an image. You are simply expressing the truth of being freely, wildly, without apology. The soul does not need permission to shine. It only needs room. And now, you've made space. This is the moment of remembrance, not something you can force, not something you can earn, only something you can allow. By softening, by quieting, by becoming still enough to feel what has always been true. And when it rises, when the presence begins to hum again through your veins, you'll know, not with the mind but with the being, and you'll smile. Because the journey was never to somewhere else. It was always back here, back to the heart, back to the source, back to now. And now, you remember. Chapter 6. The Joy of Returning. There is a joy unlike any other, the joy of coming home to a place you never truly left. It's not loud. It doesn't demand celebration. It is quiet, like the sunrise after a long night, warm, familiar, undeniable. It arrives not with fireworks, but with a soft, inward exhale, the kind that says, yes, this is it. You don't return with baggage. You don't carry your achievements to the altar. You don't need to prove yourself to the infinite, because the source was never measuring you, only waiting. Not out of impatience, but out of timeless love. This is the joy of returning, not as someone superior, not as someone enlightened, but as someone real. Someone who has walked the dream, fallen into illusion, tasted suffering, and chosen to come back. You return like the prodigal son in the old parable, expecting punishment, but finding only embrace, because the divine never stopped loving you. It never withheld the light, you just closed your eyes. And now, with eyes open, you see that nothing has changed, except you. Not who you are, but how do you see? And in that seeing, the whole world softens. Colors seem deeper. Faces seem sacred. Moments stretch open like windows into eternity. You begin to notice beauty where you once saw only routine. A bird's song becomes a message. The wind feels like a blessing. Even pain carries a sweetness, because now you know it won't last and it never defined you anyway. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is presence, the kind of presence that sees everything clearly and still chooses wonder. The joy of returning. It is not the joy of gaining something. It is the joy of shedding weight. You didn't know you were carrying. You walk more freely, you speak more honestly, you feel more deeply, because there's nothing left to defend. You are not here to be someone. You are here to be. Not to impress, but to express. Not to arrive, but to remember. And in that remembrance, joy blooms, effortlessly. You don't need the world to change. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't even need every day to be peaceful, because joy is no longer tied to circumstances. It arises from alignment, from resonance with your own truth, from the knowing that you are no longer acting out someone else's script. You are writing your own story now, not with fear, but with freedom. And even the pen feels like it belongs to something larger than you. This joy is not static. It dances, it weeps, it bows before beauty and mystery. It doesn't require explanation. It simply is, like light pouring through a window. It doesn't care what shape the glass is, it just shines, and now you shine, not as someone better, but as someone who has returned to the truth of what they've always been. You begin to smile without reason. You begin to cry without shame. You begin to see each person you meet as a version of yourself wearing a different costume. Even those who judge you, you see them differently now. You no longer take it personally. You recognize their fear, their longing, their forgetting, because you were there too, and you may be again. But for now you remember, and that memory changes how you live. Returning doesn't mean life becomes easy. It means you stop resisting life, you flow, you adjust, you respond with clarity. Not because you've become passive, but because you trust the intelligence that moves through all things. You don't need to control the river. You've learned to float, and in that surrender, you find a power far greater than force. A strength born not of willpower but of alignment. Even your actions begin to change. You no longer act from fear. You act from love, not sentimental love, but the fierce, grounded love of presence. You don't need recognition. You don't need to win. You don't need to be right, because you've already found what can't be lost. And it lives inside you like a quiet fire that warms every moment. The world will still pull at you. Distractions will come. Old patterns will whisper. But now, you know the way back. You know how to pause, how to breathe, how to return to the center. And each time you do, the return becomes easier, softer, more natural, until one day you realize you're no longer returning. You're living in that place, that still point, that sacred home inside the heart. This is the joy the mystics spoke of, the joy that surpasses understanding. Not because it's irrational, but because it doesn't need to be understood. It needs only to be lived. You don't shout it from the rooftops. You carry it in your gaze, in your presence, in your patience with those still lost in the game. Because of the joy of returning isn't complete until you help another remember, not by preaching, but by being, by walking as lightly, by listening, by loving without needing anything in return. That's what the Source does, and now you've remembered, that is what you are. Chapter 7. Living inside the divine game. You have awakened, not in the eyes of the world, but in the eyes behind your eyes. The one who watches has remembered. But now comes the truest test. Can you stay awake while living in a world that's still asleep? Can you walk inside the dream, knowing it's a dream, and still play with love, with courage, with presence? This is not an escape. This is integration. This is the soul re-entering the world, not to flee from illusion, but to illuminate it from within. The divine game has not ended. It has only changed shape. You are no longer the lost player searching for meaning in every role. You are now the lucid one, conscious of the stage, aware of the mask, but still choosing to perform with all your heart. Because love does not leave the game when it awakens. Love returns. Love walks back into the noise, carrying silence. So what does it mean to live inside the divine game, with your eyes open? It means living deliberately, moving slowly, speaking with awareness, listening with your whole being, responding, not from habit, but from depth. It means doing ordinary things with extraordinary presence. Washing dishes as if the cosmos swirled in the soap, listening to a friend as if God were speaking through their trembling voice. It means no longer dividing life into sacred and profane. Everything is sacred. When you remember who you are, you stop chasing peak experiences because every moment becomes luminous. You stop seeking enlightenment because you see that life itself is the path, messy, raw, beautiful, real. You start showing up not to escape karma, but to embody wisdom, not to transcend the body, but to bless it with awareness, not to reach the light, but to reveal it, right here, in this breath, in this gesture, in this now. The awakened one does not seek perfection. They seek presence. They do not live to impress, but to express the source through their humanity. And yes, you will fall. You will forget. You will react, doubt, and stumble. But the difference is, now you know how to return. You're no longer a victim of your stories. You are the space in which stories rise and dissolve. You no longer grip every thought as truth. You let them come. You let them go. You watch, and you smile. Because the sky is not disturbed by the clouds. To live inside the game as one who remembers it is to become a mirror for others. Not by teaching, by being. Your presence becomes the transmission. Your stillness becomes the message. People feel something in you, not because of what you say, but because of what you no longer need to prove. You no longer compete. You no longer defend. You no longer build yourself out of comparison. And that absence of ego feels like peace. You become the eye in the storm, the flame that does not flicker, even when the wind howls. You don't run from life. You enter it fully, knowing that the play is not the end, but the expression of something eternal. This is not spiritual superiority. This is spiritual service. You have remembered the truth. Now you become its living embodiment, not on a pedestal, but in the kitchen, in traffic, in conflict, in conversation. You become a sacred contradiction, fully in the world yet not of it. You feel pain, but it doesn't bind you. You feel joy, but you don't cling to it. You feel desire, but you don't get lost in it. You become the open sky. You become the field. You become the source playing human without forgetting the light inside the mask. This is the essence of the divine game. To awaken and stay awake amidst the noise. To live in alignment with what is real while honoring what is temporary. To see every person, every moment as an opportunity to bring the infinite into form. To bless the world, not with words, but with presence. You will still cry. You will still laugh. You will still dance and fall and rise again. But now you do it all from the still point, the center within that never moves, never breaks, never forgets. And when you speak from truth. And when you act from love. And when you love with the fullness of being that remembers it is loving itself in another form. You no longer try to fix the world. You serve it. You no longer try to change people. You see them. You no longer resist the flow. You trust it. Because the source lives in you now, not as an idea, but as a rhythm. And you've learned to dance with it in your own unique way. This is not the end of your journey. This is the beginning of conscious life, the beginning of walking the path with eyes wide open and heart fully alive, not reaching for heaven, but bringing it here, into your hands, into your voice, into the way you touch the world. You are not separate from the divine. You are its face, its hands. It's a whisper. You are the dreamer, now awake inside the dream. So live now. As a sacred player in the game, play your part fully, but don't forget who's watching. Don't forget who you are. Because the one who watches it is not far away. It is you. It has always been you. Epilogue. The one who watches. You've walked the long road home, from formless silence to embodied form, from pure being into story, from remembering into forgetting, and now back again. But in truth, you never left, Not really. The soul cannot depart from the source because it is the source, wearing a face, speaking a name, moving through time so it could awaken to its own light. This is the divine paradox. You were never separate. You only dreamed you were. And the dream was beautiful because it brought you here, to this moment, to this remembrance. You are not the character. You are not the voice in your head. You are not the memory, the identity, the name is written on your passport. You are not the story. You are the space in which the story unfolds, the stillness beneath the noise, the presence behind the eyes, the watcher, the one who has been here the whole time, waiting, not with impatience, but with love, watching you play, watching you fall, watching you search, strive, resist, and finally, watching you stop. Because the moment you stopped trying to become, you began to be. And in being, you found peace. Not because life became easy, but because you finally saw through the illusion that it had to be. You saw that the truth was never far. It was always here, beneath the costumes, the noise, the wanting, and now the one who watches is no longer silent. It lives through your breath, moves in your hands, speaks in your gaze, not with pride but with gentleness, not to prove anything, but to be everything. This was never about escape. It was never about becoming a saint or dissolving into light and leaving the world behind. It was about embodying the sacred here, in this place, in this skin, in this life you once thought was too mundane to hold the infinite. But now you see, the infinite hides in the mundane. It hides in your coffee cup, in the way you listen, in the way you smile at a stranger, in the way you hold silence when there's nothing more to say. God is not found at the end of the road. God is what the road is made of, and the road is you. You are the dreamer, the actor, the playwright, and the stage. You are the spark of the divine, wrapped in bone and breath, here, not to escape life, but to illuminate it. You are not becoming awakened. You are the awakening, the soul remembering itself one moment at a time. So now walk gently, not because you are fragile, but because everything is sacred. Let your life become a prayer, not in words, but of presence. Let your choices be guided, not by fear, but by truth. Let your silence speak where noise once lived. And let your eyes remind others that there is something beyond the mirror, something eternal, something kind, something true. You do not need to convince anyone. Your life is the message. Your peace is the offering. Your stillness is the temple. Every step you take now, it is a step on sacred ground. Because the earth is no longer something you walk upon. It's something you recognize as part of you. And every face you meet is not a stranger. It is a reflection of the same light wearing a different form. So look with reverence, speak with awareness, love without walls, because love is not something you give, it's something you are. And when you remember that, the game changes. You've played the role of the seeker, you've played the role of the lost, you've played the role of the one who strives, who climbs, who hopes. Now, play the role of the one who knows, not in arrogance, not with superiority, but with compassion so deep it makes room for everyone else to remember too. Let your presence become an open door, a silent invitation, a quiet flame in the night that says to the weary, you are already home. And when the world forgets again, when the chaos returns, when the illusions scream louder than the truth, you'll remember how to return to the breath, to the silence, to the stillness inside your ribs. And there waiting will be the one who watches, the unshaken, the unchanged, the eternal flame that flickers behind every thought, every identity, every heartbeat. This is not the end of your journey. This is where real life begins. Not a life of striving, but a life of remembering, returning, radiating. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean remembering itself in a single sacred drop. You are not the storm. You are the sky. You are not the story. You are the page. You are not the reflection. You are the light. You are not the one who seeks. You are the one who watches. And now, you are awake.